And now one of the most respected investors in America is going to tell you about his secrets.
Warren Buffett. It's the sound of money.
$9.2 Warren Buffett, the second richest man in America.
He's estimated to be worth about $62 billion and makes him the richest man in the world.
You know, Buffett is not exactly what you might expect.
Even though he's in the money business, he doesn't even own a calculator or a computer.
He takes the long view, and it's made him billions, many billions.
Maybe you can beat the House, but I don't think you can beat Warren Buffett.
Buffett filed his first tax return at 13 years old.
But he's no average billionaire, Tom.
No, he certainly isn't, Matt.
He's a $44 billion average Joe.
Warren Buffett has an approach that doesn't make him very popular with his fellow billionaires.
Warren Buffett, the boy from Nebraska who grew up to become the Wizard of Omaha.
What was it about him that allowed him to become the richest man in the world? How did he do it?
70 years ago, I was in high school, almost a third as long as the country has been around. And when I was in high school, I really only had two things on my mind: girls and cars. and I wasn't doing very well with girls, so we'll talk about cars. But let's just imagine that when we finish, I'm going to let each one of you pick out the car of your choice. Sounds good, doesn't it? Pick it out, any color, you name it. It'll be tied up with a bow, and it'll be at your house tomorrow. And you say, well, what's the catch? And the catch is that it's the only car you're going to get in your lifetime. Now, what are you going to do knowing that that's the only car you're ever going to have and you love that car? You're going to take care of it like you cannot believe. Now, what I'd like to suggest, you're not going to get only one car in your lifetime, but you're going to get one body and one mind, and that's all you're going to get. And that body and mind feels terrific now, but it has to last you a lifetime. I'm on the way to the office. It's all of a 5-minute drive. I've been doing it for 54 years. One of the good things about this 5-minute drive is that on the way there's a McDonald's, so I'll pick up something.
Good morning. Thank you for choosing McDonald's. Go ahead and order whenever you're ready.
I'll have a sausage McMuffin with egg and cheese.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you. And I tell my wife, as I shave in the morning, I say either 261, 295, or 317. And she puts that amount in a little cup by me here, and that determines which of 3 breakfasts I get. Okay, 295. There's
How
the
you
two.
doing, sir?
Hey, great. You're on candid camera.
I see. Hello, everybody.
When I'm not feeling quite so prosperous, I might go with the 261, which is 2 sausage patties, and then I put them together and pour myself a Coke. Hi, how are you? 317 is a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, but the market's down this morning, so I think I'll pass up the 317 and go with the 295. I like numbers. Started before I could remember. It just felt good working with numbers. I was always playing around with numbers in one way or another, and it was fun to have a bunch of guys over and have them betting on which marble would reach the drain first. I had a lot of energy as a kid. I was inquisitive, and I was the youngest one always in the class because I'd skip. I've always been competitive. I like to read more than most kids. I really like to read a lot. My Aunt Edie gave me a copy of the World Almanac And that was heaven to me. And I can still tell you that the almost population was 214,006 in 1930. Some numbers just kind of stick with you. And very early, probably when I was 7 or so, I took this book out of the Benson Library called 1,000 Ways to Make $1,000. And one of the ways in this book was having penny weighing machines. And I sat and calculated how much it would cost to buy the first weighing machine and then how long it would take for the profit for that one to buy another one. And I would sit there and create these compound interest tables to figure out how long it would take me to have a weighing machine for every person in the world. I had everybody in the country weighing themselves 10 times a day, and me just sitting there like John D. Rockefeller's weighing machines. The allowance when I was a little boy was a nickel a week, but I liked the idea of having a little more than a nickel a week to work with, and I went into business very early. I started selling Coca-Cola door to door, I sold gum door to door, or sold Saturday Evening Post, Liberty Magazine, Ladies Home Journal, you name it. I think I enjoyed the game almost right from the start. But I like being my own boss. That's one thing I liked about delivering papers. I could arrange the route I wanted. Nobody was bothering me at 5 or 6 in the morning. I was delivering 500 papers a day, and I made a penny a paper, but in terms of compounding, that penny turned into something else. Einstein is reputed to have said that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world or something like that. And it goes back to that story you probably learned when you were in grade school where somebody did something for the king and the king said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "Well, let's take a chessboard and put 1 kernel of wheat on the first square and then double it on the second and double it on the third." And the king readily agreed to it. And by the time he figured out what 2 to the 64th amounted to, he was giving away the entire kingdom. So it's a pretty simple concept, but over time, it accomplishes extraordinary things.
Berkshire is an amazing company. It's 4th largest company in the Fortune 500. He is the only person who has ever, from scratch, built a company that is in the top 10 of the Fortune 500.
Well, Berkshire is a holding company of sorts. It owns a large number of separate businesses that operate independently of each other and, to a great extent, from the parent company, Berkshire Hathaway.
Well, gold's been red hot. My favorite green gold. So strong. All right. Well, we're going to get more from you in a second.
We have maybe 70, maybe 80 businesses, and we ask them to behave in a way that doesn't hurt our reputation at Berkshire Hathaway, but they run their own lives. Other people do most of the decorating of the office, so various things come in. Originally, when I moved in 1962, you can see this. I went down to the South Omaha Library, and I think for $1, I got 7 copies of old New York Times from big times like the Panic of 1907. This is one, 1929, obviously. But I wanted to put on the walls days of extreme panic in Wall Street, just as a reminder that anything can happen in this world. I mean, it's instructive art, you can call it. I was born in 1930 here in Omaha, Nebraska, during the stock market crash. Well, my dad lost his job in 1931, a year after I was born. He was a stock salesman, and he had what little savings he had in the bank, and so he started his own company. He worked right through the Depression.
He had an investment company, and as an adult, when I look back, I thought, wow, did that ever take a lot of nerve? Sometimes we'd go down there on Sunday and we could play with the adding machine.
My brother and I tended to play the games together. And I remember at one point, he said to me, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30 or something like that. It was totally outside of anything my family had experienced, but he just was unusual that way.
Well, I was the oldest, and then my brother, and then my sister. And my father would go to New York periodically to check on businesses and stocks and things like that. And he'd come back, he always had a costume for each of us, and Warren loved it. He was very good-natured. He was quiet. It was hard to tell he was a genius at that point. But, I mean, who was looking?
The first books I read on investment were actually in my dad's office. Pretty soon I read all the books in the office and read some of them more than once. My dad had various nicknames for me. He'd call me Fireball sometimes because I'd start little businesses. He didn't care about money at all. He believed very much in having an inner scorecard and never worry about what other people are thinking about you. You know, just if you know why you're doing what you're doing, that's good enough. I admired everything about him to the extent that I was absorbing lessons from him without knowing it. And the idea that all lives have equal value is something that all three of his children felt since I can remember. My dad, at one point, ran for Congress when I was 12 or so. It was a very Republican household. I campaigned for him, my sisters campaigned for him. The whole family did. My mother was very, very bright, and she was very gregarious. She was a good campaigner for my dad.
She had a lot of ambition, and I think my brother Warren got a lot of his extreme competitiveness from my mother, actually.
She was brilliant at math. You know, I guess they still had these things where you cranked them and things added up, and she could add it in her head faster than the machine could do it. She was absolutely amazing in that.
She was very dutiful about taking care of the kids, but you didn't get the same feeling of love. It was there, but it didn't come out the same way as with my dad.
In the nation, the only permanent way to prosperity is a balanced budget. Unless that goal is achieved, all post-war plans will collapse like Hitler's conquest.
You have heard Congressman Howard L. H. Buffett, Republican member of the House of Representatives from Nebraska, speaking
When I was about 12 or 13, we moved to Washington, my family, and I was mad. I was having fun in Omaha. I lost all my friends, and now I moved to a town where they were all strange. So I was very, very unhappy. At school, I just lost interest. I took pleasure in tormenting my teachers. At that time, for example, AT&T was the stock that all teachers owned for their retirement. And I decided that it would drive my teachers a little crazy if I went short the stock, because when you go short a stock, you're betting that it will go down. So I shorted 10 shares of AT&T and then brought the confirmation to school and showed these teachers that I was shorting the stock. They found me a big pain in the neck, but they did think I knew a lot about stocks. And then at home, my mother would have terrific headaches. And you didn't want to be around her when she was having the headaches. And she would lash out more. She would never do it in public.
Well, I think we were terrified of her. When I'd wake up in the morning, I'd listen to hear her voice. I could tell by her voice it was going to be a terrible day or not.
When she got difficult, the three children felt it. When I was at the low point, I decided that I would run away. So I talked two other guys into running away with me. We went out and we started hitchhiking. And then we got picked up by the highway patrol, and that scared the hell out of us. It's very interesting. My dad never really gave me help about doing this. But he finally said, you know, he said, you can do better than this. And just saying that, I mean, I felt I was letting him down, basically. So in all ways, He was teaching me. He never taught by telling me things. He just taught by example. He had unlimited confidence in me, even when I screwed up. And that takes you a long, long way. The best gift I was ever given was to have the father that I had when I was born. I didn't want to go to college. I was 16 when I got out of high school, and I was buying stocks. I mean, I actually was having a pretty good time, and I didn't see that there really was much to be gained by going to college, but my dad kind of jollied me into it.
He had a roommate who was a friend of mine, and the roommate said it just drove him crazy because he studied all the time, when Ward would come in like 15 minutes before the exam and just ace his way through it.
I finished in 3 years because I had enough credits, and I was in a hurry. I wanted to get out. When I got out of the University of Nebraska, I applied to Harvard Business School. They told me I was to get interviewed in a place near Chicago. I got there, and he interviewed me for about 10 minutes. And he said, forget it. You're not going to Harvard. And so now I'm thinking, what do I tell my dad? You know, this is terrible. And it turned out to be the best thing ever happened to me. Later that summer, I was looking through a catalog. And in the catalog, it had these names of people that were teaching. And one was Graham and another was Dodd. I had read this book by the two of them. So I wrote him a letter in mid-August. And I said, dear Professor Dodd, I said, I thought you guys were dead. But now that I found out that you're alive and teaching at Columbia, I would really like to come. And he admitted me. So, you know, that it just shows you never can tell.
Gentlemen, that's Graham.
Ben was this incredible teacher. I mean, he was a natural, and he drew us all in.
Are Wall Street professionals more accurate in the shorter term than the long-term forecast?
Well, our studies indicate that you have your choice between tossing coins and taking the consensus of expert opinion. And the results are just about the same in each case.